Welcome back to Life's Challenge. My name is Avital, and this week's Parshat is Parshat Shelach. And Parshat Shelach teaches us the importance and the value of focusing on what's positive and what's good in our life. And we can see this from a very interesting lesson, a very interesting story in the Parsha, which is the story of the spies that were sent into the land of Canaan to scope out the land. So if you'll recall, the Jewish people are in the desert. And they've been wandering around in the desert, traveling towards the land of Canaan, which is now modern-day Israel. They've been traveling around, going towards Canaan after leaving Egypt, where they were slaves, and their goal is to settle in Canaan. That's sort of what they were promised. And the time has come where the Jews are getting closer, and God tells Moses to send out a leader from each tribe into Canaan to scope out the land. And here's what Moses tells these leaders that they should look for, what they should be paying attention to when they get to Canaan. He says, "See the land, how is it? And the people that dwells in it, is it strong or weak? Is it few or numerous? And how is the land in which it dwells? Is it good or is it bad? And how are the cities in which it dwells? Are they open or are they fortified? And how is the land? Is it fertile or is it lean? Are there trees in it or not?" So it was on a specific these leaders went out on a specific mission to find answers to the questions that Moses provided them with, to be able to come back with information that would help them to prepare to battle against other nations potentially, to be able to know what kind of produce they're going to be able to plant, just to get important information. Think about moving anywhere. You want to know what the place is like. You want to know how to be prepared. And so Moses sends these leaders with this task. So the leaders return, and not only do they share this information with Moses, but in front of the entire assembly of the Jewish people, they come back and they say, "And indeed it flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. But the people that dwells in the land are powerful. The cities are fortified and very great. And we also saw the offspring of the giants. Amalek dwells in the area of the south. The Hittite, the Jebusite, and the Amorite dwell on the mountain, and the Canaanite dwells by the sea and on the bank of the Jordan." And then Caleb, who was one of the leaders who was sent into the land of Canaan, he says, "We shall surely ascend and conquer it," being the land, "for we surely can do it." But the men who ascended with him said, "We cannot ascend to that people, for it is too strong for us." And this made the Jewish people very upset. They were very upset and unhappy that the land was going to be too difficult to conquer. And they said things like, "If only we had died in Egypt. Is it not better for us to return to Egypt? Let's appoint a leader and return to Egypt." This is a trope that we see throughout the last two books of the Torah, Bamidbar and Devarim, where the Jewish people are asking repeatedly, wouldn't it just be better for us to go back to Egypt? It would have been better if we had died in Egypt. It was better when we were slaves in Egypt. They were very fearful of the unknown and very fearful of these challenges that they might face. They had been slaves their entire lives, and now being free people, it's not always just because they were physically free, doesn't mean that they were mentally free and that they were not accustomed to a certain way of life and that something outside of that box was very scary for them. But God, nonetheless, he was very angry with the leaders and with the Jewish people for this response that they wanted to go back to Egypt. And what he decides is that all of the people who are over the age of 20 would spend the next 40 years wandering in the desert, and that they would die out in the desert. And that those under 20 and the descendants of the people in the desert would merit to enter the land of Canaan. So once that generation passed, then they would be able to continue on in their journey. But interestingly, God says this about Caleb. He says, "Because a different spirit was within him, and he followed me wholeheartedly, I shall bring him to the land to which he came, and his offspring shall possess it." So Caleb, who is the one who said, "No, surely we can conquer this land, surely we can ascend to this land," his feeling about the situation was one that was more positive than the other tribal leaders who got sent. He came back, and while all of them were saying, "No, it's not possible, we can't do it, this land is hard, its inhabitants are giants," Caleb was the one who was like, "But it flows with milk and honey, and there's goodness, and we can do it, we surely can do it." And it's not that he was ignoring what was a challenge, what was bad there, but he was focusing on what was positive about the land, and he was focusing on having the confidence that they can overcome this challenge if they put their mind to it and with God's help. And focusing on the bad, it's the easiest way. It's natural. We were created with instincts to protect us, to scope out possible threats. Think about our body. Something hurts, we focus on that one thing because it's like, is this a problem? Do I have to pay attention to it? Do I have to address it? It's a survival instinct in a sense to focus on the negative. It takes a conscious effort, it takes a fight to focus on what's good and to focus on the positive, the half full portion of the glass rather than what's missing. And God rewarded him greatly for having this spirit. And we can learn from this interaction with the spies and from how Caleb was different that we too can fight to choose to focus on what's good. And that is something that clearly here was rewarded. Life is hard. It's going to be hard, but we have the choice to focus on the challenges or on the beautiful parts of life and on what's good at the moment. That's a choice that only we get to make. And it is a mind shift as well. And it's not always easy, but we can see from this week's Parsha that it's so important and a really beautiful lesson. And so I wish you all a wonderful week and a Shabbat Shalom, and I look forward to speaking with you next time.